fun fact, I actually auditioned for this movie. Got up 5 in the morning, went to Manhattan, and stood in a line for 3 hours, only to have everyone who was union get to go ahead of me. And I can honestly say sitting through this movie was about as much of a nightmare as going through that process. Cue title theme. Jersey Boys is a movie that stars no one important minus Christopher Walken in a supporting role, and is based on the music of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Now, I'm not going to lie, that's not music I'm overly familiar with, but I've heard enough of their stuff to say they were a pretty talented band and their music was very good. And as I said in the opening, this movie is not very good. In fact, I'd say this movie is quite bad. Essentially, the film just sort of recounts their whole rise to stardom, all the trouble and insanity that went with it. And at first it looked really interesting. So there's a lot of involvement of mafia connections. For those of you who don't know, many singers back then, and some even still say today, actually needed the mob's help to get started and were indebted to them. And that was kind of interesting to watch. But the movie is paced so poorly that half the time I'm completely confused what's happening. For example, some scenes the boys are narrating it, other scenes they're not when there clearly should be narration. Some of the times it's one boy talking, some of the times it's another. The actors playing the Four Seasons aren't particularly memorable. They don't do a bad job, but honestly, Christopher Walken is about where the talent for this movie begins and ends. But it hurts because the script is bad. And another big problem is that I never know how much time has passed. We're constantly flash forwarding, and there's no real sense of time jumps. Like 1 minute, we'll see one guy's kids, they're real little. He'll be in the middle of a conversation, and then that conversation will continue as they're older. And you'll have things that get brought up in the movie that are brought up later without any real context. A lot of the movie is very poorly put together visually. As you've probably seen the trailers and commercials, the film has this weird grayish tint to it. And the thing is that sometimes that can work. I thought that worked in Man of Steel. There have been other things throughout the years that have made that work. This film does not make that work. I think they're trying to give it kind of like an old-fashioned 50s look to the nature of the movie, but honestly, it's just kind of distracting and kind of annoying, especially when you realize it's hard to tell when and where the film takes place because, once again, it's just sort of going all over the place. The movie's directed by Clint Eastwood, and this is the guy who has directed such masterpieces as Gran Torino. He's also directed such shitboxes as the Matt Damon Ghost Talking movie. And to be perfectly honest, from my understanding, this film went through several directors, several writers. Jon Favreau was originally the one attached to this movie, but then he left and some other directors left. This feels like the perfect example of a movie that had too many people coming and going. Everyone left their own little mark, but when the next guy came, instead of following what's there and continuing with it and just letting the execution flow, they tried to change and mucky it up to the point where this movie is incoherent, it's incohesive. Hearing the Four Seasons music is pretty good. The boys look like the Four Seasons. And I'm not going to lie, some of the scenes in it are interesting, but for the most part this film's bland, forgettable, a complete mess. I'm going to say Jersey Boys is a 3 out of 10 on the drama scale. Gets across the cool stuff a couple times, but for the most part, just skip this one and wait for Transformers 4 next week. Or are you not interested in Transformers 4? I just want to forget about this movie, so tell me, what films are you looking for the rest of the summer? Because school is almost out, and kids, I'd like for you to click to like and click to subscribe, because I bring you movie reviews, good or bad.